Good day, everyone. This is Arcelin Moreno, BSEd English 1. So today, I'm going to present what I've learned in child and adolescence subject. So in lesson 1, which is the child and adolescence, so I've learned that childhood is the time for children to be in school, at play, to grow strong and confident with the love and encouragement of their family and an extended community of caring adults. So child development refers to the sequence of physical, language, thought, and emotional changes that occur in a child from birth to the beginning of adulthood. So, importance of child development. So, observing and monitoring child development is an important tool to ensure that children meet their development milestones. So, here are the brief history of child development. So, scholars have different opinions on the exact number of stages of development children go through on their way of becoming adults. So, psychologist Jean Piaget worked out a theory that describes four main stages of child development such as birth through 18 to 24 months, a pre-operational that includes toddlerhood, and early childhood through the age of 7. So, a concrete pre-operational stage from age to 7 to 12 and adolescence, where other scholars describe 6 stages of child development that include newborns, infants, preschool, school age, and adolescence. So, let's proceed to the letter B, which is the adolescence. So, adolescence is a phase of maturation. It is a transitional period of physical and psychological human development between childhood and adulthood, the cultural purposes of which involve preparation to assume adult roles. So, classically, adolescence occurs from 12 to 22 to 25 years old. So, we are here in lesson 2, which is rights of children and young persons. So, these are my learnings in this lesson. So, Presidential Decree number 603 dated December 10, 1974 is the provision of the code. So, all children shall be entitled to the rights set forth without distinction as to legitimacy or illegitimacy. So, sex, social status, religion, political antecedents, and other factors. So this covers 12 distinctive rights of children and young persons. So, children's human rights. So the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, or UNCRC, is the internationally binding human rights agreement. So the convention has 54 articles, 42 of which set out of the rights of children and young people. So the rest are about how governments must publicize and carry out the convention. So here are the rights given under the convention. So children and young people up to 18 years old have all the rights under the convention. So children and young people have social, economic, cultural, civil, and political rights. So the last is Convention on the Rights of the Child. So a convention is an agreement between countries to obey the same law. So when the government of a country ratifies a convention, that means it agrees to obey the rules set out in the convention. So there are 4 core principles of the convention. So non-discrimination. So the number 2 is devotion to the best interest of the child. So the number 3 is the right to life. So the last is survival and development and respect for the views of child. So the convention protects children's rights by setting standards in healthcare, education, and legal, civil, and social services. So that's all my learnings in lesson 2. So we are here in lesson 3, which is the topic is the situation of Filipino children and young persons. So here are my learnings in this topic. So children of the Philippines. So children's rights have followed a similar trajectory. And while they are far from being fully guaranteed, the country's openness and willingness to change has given its people hope that soon even greater improvements will be made. So, there are 9 main problems faced by children in the Philippines. So, The number 1 is poverty. So, close to out of every 3 individuals' lives below the poverty line, while the country itself is in full economic expansion. So, that's the number 1. So, the number 2 is health. So, the infant mortality rate is particularly high in the Philippines. Furthermore, more than 1 out of every 5 newborn children exhibits dietary deficiency from the moment of birth. So, next is child labor. So, more than 10% of Filipino children are compelled to work so as to support the needs of their family. So, the number 4 is right to non-discrimination. So, children born out of wedlock, native people, young girls, handicapped children. So, number 5 is child soldier. So, the Philippines number among 20 countries in which children are often to deployed as soldiers in armed conflicts. So, the number 6 is child marriage. So, 14% of young women in the Philippines get married before the age of 18. So, the number 7 is violence against children. So, corporal punishment is frequently practiced in the Philippines, notably within the family. So, the number 8 is justice for minors. The Committee of Children's Rights has expressed profound concern about justice for minors. So, the last is right to an identity. So, 17% of births are not officially registered in the Philippines. The country has made some progress on this issue. So, that's all the main problems faced by children in the Philippines. So, we are here in chapter 2, which is physical and motor development of children and adolescents. So, here are the lesson 1, which is physical and motor development. So, these are my learnings. So, physical changes in height and weight happen at a comparatively slower rate in the preschool years than in infancy. So, normally, a child adds about 2 to 3 inches in height and about 6 pounds in weight yearly. So, alongside with the physical changes are the changes in motor development. So, more than the ability to walk, the child is also able to acquire skills and begin to explore as part of its acquired independence. So, the letter A is early childhood. So, it is birth to 8 years old. So, early childhood is a stage in human development. So, it generally includes toddlerhood and sometimes afterwards. So, this is the time of tremendous growth across all areas of development. So, that's the letter A. So, the letter B is middle childhood. So, it is 8 to 12 years old. So, middle childhood. It has not been considered an important stage in human development. So, why? So, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory labeled this period of life the latency stage. So, a time when sexual and aggressive urges are repressed. So, that's the letter B, which is middle childhood. So, the last is, which is letter C, is adolescence. So, adolescence, it is 12 to 18 years old. It can be defined in a variety of ways, psychologically, culturally, cognitively. Each way suggests a slightly different definition. So, adolescent years are another period of accelerated growth. So, that's all my learnings in chapter 2 and in this lesson 1, which is physical and motor development. So, let's proceed to the lesson 2, which is brain development. So, here are my learnings about this topic. So, early childhood years of a child's life are very important for later health and development. So, one of the main reasons is how fast the brain grows starting before birth and continuing into early childhood. So, brain develops depends on many factors in addition to genes, such as proper nutrition starting in pregnancy, exposure to toxins or infections. So, in child's experiences with other people and the world. So, here are the importance of early childhood experience for brain development. So, in the importance of early childhood experience for brain development, parents and other caregivers can support healthy brain growth by speaking to, playing with, and caring for their children. So, the letter B is middle childhood or concrete operational thought. So, according to Piaget middle childhood, concrete operational thought, children in early childhood are in the pre-operational stage of our development in which they learn to think symbolically about the world. So, from ages 7 to 11, the school age child continues to develop, in which Piaget referred to as the concrete operational stage of cognitive development. So that's the letter B. So the letter C is adolescence. So in adolescence, children become teenagers. Their brains grow and change. These changes affect their thinking and behavior. So teenage brain development. The basics, children's brains have massive growth, especially when they are very young. By the time they are 6, their brains are already about 90 to 95% of adult size. But the brain still needs a lot of remodeling before it can function as an adult brain. So we are here in lesson 3, which is factors affecting development, mental nutrition, child nutrition, early sensory stimulation. So here are my learnings about this topic. So human development is about the real freedom ordinary people have to decide who to be, what to do, and how to live. So letter E is maternal malnutrition. So what is maternal malnutrition? So this is the ability of mother to provide nutrients and oxygen for her baby is a critical factor for fetal health and its survival. So the letter B is child nutrition. So child nutrition is parents play a key role in promoting health eating. Right from the start, choosing to breastfeed gives babies a nutritional boost and may help them learn to better regulate their food intake. So the letter C is early sensory stimulation. So from birth to early childhood, children use their senses to explore and to try to make sense of the world around them. So they do this by touching, tasting, smelling, seeing, and moving and hearing. So here are the factors that affect growth and development in children. So the number 1 is heredity. So what is heredity? So heredity is the transmission of physical characteristics from parents to children through their genes. So the number 2 is environment. So the environment plays a critical role in the development of children, and it represents the sum total of physical and psychological stimulation that child receives. So the number 3 is sex. So the sex of the child is another major factor affecting the physical growth and development of a child. So the next is exercise and health. So the word exercise here does not mean physical exercise as a discipline or children deliberately engaging in physical activities knowing it would help them grow. So the number 5 is hormones. So what is hormones? Hormones belong to the endocrine system and influence the various function of our bodies. So the number 6 is nutrition. So nutrition is a critical factor in growth as everything the body needs to build and repair itself comes from the food we eat. So the number 7 is familial influence. So families have the most profound impact in nurturing a child and determining the ways in which they develop psychologically and socially. So the number 8 is geographical influence. So where you live also has a great influence on how your children turn out to be. So the last is socioeconomic status. So socioeconomic status of a family determines the quality of the opportunity a child gets. So that's all my learnings in this lesson. So we are here in lesson 4, which is exemptional development. So physical disabilities, sensory impairments, learning disabilities, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. So exemptional development comprises a number of different activities, so such as physical disabilities, hereditary, and acquired. So, here are the some physical disabilities. So, number 1 is acquired brain injury, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, spina bifida, and PADER. So, what is handicaps? So, handicaps is a mental or physical disadvantage. So, such as blindness or a missing leg is a handicap. So, here are the factors why handicaps happen. So, number 1 is prenatal development. So, perinatal factors and postnatal factors. So, here are the visual impairments among students. So, albinism, cataracts, macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa, and retinopathy. So, there are 3 subtypes of ADHD. So, it is predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive or impulsive, and the last is combined. So, let's proceed to attention deficit disorder. So, what is it? So, attention deficit disorder or ADD, a neurological disorder that causes a range of behavior problems such as difficulty attending to instruction, focusing on schoolwork, keeping up with assignments, following instructions, completing tests, and social interaction. So, that's all my learning in this lesson. So, we are here in lesson 3, which is linguistic and literacy development of children and adolescents. So, the lesson 1 is natural history of language development. So, language is a communication system that involves using words and systematic rules to organize those words to transmit information from one individual to another. So, here are the 4 theories of natural history of language development. So, the number 1 is Chomsky's theories. So, Noam Chomsky has been studying and developing his theories since the 1950s. So, in his book, Aspect of the Theory of Syntax, published in 1965, he has pushed forward the fundamental observation that there are deep structures and surface structures in every sentence, no matter what language. So, the number 2 is B.F. Skinner's behaviorist perspective. So, B.F. Skinner theorized that language acquisition is dictated by our environment and the positive or negative reinforcement we receive from it. So, parents, for example, enforce correct usage of a word in children with positive facial or verbal reactions. So, that's B.F. Skinner's perspective. So, the number 3 is Piaget's cognitive development theory. So, Jean Piaget was another prominent psychologist who offered yet another takes on language acquisition and development. So, his focus was on child development and the stages children go through to develop and learn. So, the last is Vygotsky's constructivist learning theory. So, Vygotsky's theory of social development, so it's referred to as the constructivist perspective and describes the concept of development through construction of thought and meaning. So, that's all the theory of natural history of language development. So, what are the importance of language in a society? So, language is primarily spoken, not written. So, but the development of the writing medium and later the printing system went a long way is the dissipation of knowledge, and without which humans would have remained in the dark about the ways of life and the thought processes of their ancestors. So, language is the key to human lives. So, that's all. We are here in lesson 2, which is bilingual language development. So, bilingualism is the ability to communicate in 2 different languages. So, bilingual education is the set of 2 different languages in classroom instruction. So, there are 2 major patterns of bilingual language development. So, both occurring before the age of 3. So, these are simultaneous bilingualism, and the number 2 is sequential bilingualism. So, these are the cognitive advantage and disadvantage of bilingualism. So, there are cognitive advantage and disadvantages of bilingualism and its benefit to education. So, research shows that because bilingual students are able to use two languages at the same time, so switching consistently, it develops skills for functions such as inhibition, switching attention, and working memory. So, these are the benefits of a bilingual education. So, cognitive benefits of bilingual education. So, more option for further education. A bilingual education broadens career opportunities. So, children with a bilingual education are more adaptable. So, a bilingual education creates more cultural opportunities. So, these are the relationship between language and culture. So, language and culture are intertwined. So, a particular language usually points out to a specific group of people. So, language and culture have important implications for how children learn language in school and how teachers teach language. So, we are here in lesson 3, which is emergent and early literacy, reading development, and performance. So, what is literacy? So, literacy begins at birth and builds on relationships and experiences that occur during infancy and early childhood. So, for example, introducing a child to books at an early age contributes to a later interest in reading. So, according to Laura Bush, 2003, a love of books, of holding a book, turning its pages, looking at its pictures, and living its fascinating stories goes hand in hand with a love of learning. So, emerging reading emphasizes that developmental continuum aspect of learning to read and advocates the importance of reading-related behaviors occurring before school. So, stages in literacy development includes stage 1, which is initial reading, writing, and decoding. So, stage 2, which is confirmation and fluency. So, stage 3 is reading to learn the new. So, the stage 4 is synthesizing information and applying multiple perspectives. So, the last stage is stage 5, which is critical literacy in work-hand society. So, importance of literacy in a child's development. So, literacy is essential to developing a strong sense of well-being and citizenship. So, children who have developed strong reading skills perform better in school and have a healthier self-image. So, they become lifelong learners and sought-after employees. So, that's our learnings in this topic. So, we are here in lesson 4, which is factors affecting development. So, early language stimulation, literate communities, and environment story reading. So, letter A is early language stimulation. So, language stimulation is a set of interaction strategies that can be used in any context with young children. So, this is particularly useful for early communicators and early language users. So, benefit of language stimulation. So, supportive language learning environments are created when educators have high expectations for every child and interact with children in respectful and responsive ways. So, the letter B is literate communities and environment. So, literate environments can be found in both public and private spheres. So, including home, school, workplace, local community, and the nation as a whole. So, creating social environment through balanced literacy. So, balanced literacy is a program designed to help all students learn to read and write effectively. So, the program firmly believes that all students can be successful in these subjects despite any previous academic difficulties. So, let's proceed to the letter C, which is story reading. So, the oral presentation of a story by an individual to a person or group from the text of a picture book. In this case, the pictures printed on the pages of the book were made visible to the students at least periodically during the reading. So, effect of reading on child development. So, numerous pieces of research conducted and commissioned by Book Trust have discovered the profound benefits of reading for a child's development. So that's all my learnings about this topic. So that's all my overall learnings. Thank you and God bless.